Thank you all for your comments this morning and your input to this very important conversation. Mayor Brower, I so appreciate you giving the detail of the history that we have seen in Alaska and most particularly up in our North Slope with the federal ownership of lands and how those lands, whether it was within NPRA or over on the eastern side in the wildlife refuge area, where effectively the federal government came in without much discussion to those that have lived there for generations, for thousands of years, and determined that these federal lands would be available for the federal government with no sharing with the people within the region. So, as you have pointed out, this measure that we have in front of us today is in part to help address that lack of parity, that lack of sharing, and to recognize some of the challenges that a borough like the North Slope borough faces. You have shared with us by way of comparison the size that you're dealing with. 8 villages across an area of 600 miles. The National Petroleum Reserve, the size of the state of Maine. The 1002 area within ANWR, or excuse me, the ANWR area, the size of the state of California. And so when you think about how services are provided, each one of those 8 communities is an isolated community. There is no road, as we all know, connecting the 8 so that you have any level of efficiencies. So everything from search and rescue to the power generation within the communities, the transportation facilities, small airstrips, everything has to be unique and really self-contained. These are truly islanded communities, and as such, being in the part of the state, the part of the country that they are, very, very expensive. You've outlined very briefly some of the benefits that revenue sharing can help provide, everything from operation to from clinics to schools to water and sewer to police and public safety to tribal college to emergency services. Can you share some of the threats that you are seeing from an infrastructure perspective across the borough due to the coastal and erosion issues that you effectively have to respond to because they're threatening the people within the communities, and share with us how the borough deals with the cost of providing for these infrastructure upgrades or whatever may be needed to help facilitate these communities to remain safe in their homes.
Thank you, Chairperson Murkowski. I think these are very important subjects to cover, as you've identified in the oral comments and in the written comments provided. The areas of I could immediately start communicating on is the coastal erosion that's really prevalent in our coastal communities, Point Hope, Wainwright, Barrow, Kaktovik. And we're losing land to the ocean because of the continuous wave action, coastal erosion. The less ice presence is causing more coastal erosion in an accelerated pace. The funds that the borough provides for these measures to try and protect the communities is very costly, in the millions of dollars that we provide to these communities to build up a small seawall for the time that it's been impacted from the fall storms. We have a seawall that we built out of these super sacks, or that's what we identify them as we learned them in the use by the industry to build their islands and filling them with gravel to retain the gravel and minimizing the effect of coastal erosion to several of our villages. So these are things that, and extracting gravel to fill in those sacks is very costly, and placing these sacks in areas of importance. We've had a military base up in Utrecht. The Naval Arctic Research Lab had a station there and based out of several miles out of the community. And it had a large landfill that it had developed to put its waste into this landfill over time. Debris of all sorts and hazardous waste in a sense that were placed in this landfill. Now that landfill is near an encroachment of the coastal erosion constantly getting closer. Madam Chair, I was in your office several years ago about the observations that we were dealing with in terms of that if that ever gets exposed and breaches that site, there's contamination to the Arctic Ocean and significant issues will arise from that breach of that landfill site. And it's a military site. It's very important that get mentioned, but we do not quite have the resources to identify to help minimize that coastal erosion impact that's all along down our North Slope coastline.
Well, Mayor,
Sorry.
My time is expired, but what you're speaking to is a very, very present threat. This is not something that is could be expected decades from now. Yeah. But the impact to the waste site, what we've seen with the threat to the water and sewer infrastructure. Yes. There in Utqiagvik. My ranking member here, Senator Manchin, was with me in Kaktovik, knows that airstrip is not the original strip. This is a new runway that has had to be built because of the coastal erosion there. So I'll come back for a second round and we'll have further discussion on this, but these are very important to put on the record.